Over the past week, we have seen two more high-profile police shootings, one in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the other not too far from where I am in Charlotte, North Carolina. And just so happens that I've been teaching the American Revolution and all of the events leading up to it. And as I was talking about the Boston Massacre, I saw a lot of implications. Now, it's not really my job as a teacher to come to a conclusion about whether a police shooting is justified or anything like that. But when I look back at the situation having to do with the Boston Massacre, the best source that we have is really what amounts to a propaganda piece by Paul Revere, a silversmith, who decided to portray the Boston Massacre as a brutal and intentional shooting of innocent civilians. When you look at this thing, it's obscured that it's nighttime. Now, of course, there's a moon there, okay. But other than that, the lighting is great. You see a woman in the crowd. You see a dog in the crowd. The crowd looks defenseless. The British soldiers look lined up in ranks. The captain is ordering them to fire. It's got the look of people who just wanted to shoot some colonists. And of course, Paul Revere, I guess you could have called this Colonial Lives Matter or something like that, that Paul Revere, his objective was to start a mass protest, a mass movement against these British officers. And so it ends up that John Adams, another patriot, decided that he was going to represent the British soldiers in court. A lot of people didn't want to represent them. They feared being ostracized, but John Adams thought that anyone deserved a defense under the law. And John Adams, in front of a court of Bostonians, was able to get these guys acquitted. And as it ended up, there really wasn't a great deal of evidence that these British soldiers, these lobsterbacks, whatever you want to call them, had acted outside of the law. As it ends up, these people who were portrayed by Paul Revere as so innocent were really just, they could have come right out of Hillary Rodham Clinton's basket of deplorables. These are dock workers that were armed with clubs, lots of them insulting, threatening, throwing things at these British soldiers in an atmosphere of low light. And as witnesses came forward, it ended up that these people were taunting the British soldiers and actually daring them to fire. And if you're in a situation like that, you hear fire, you're having stuff thrown at you, and all of a sudden somebody fires, you're not really asking any questions. And so what happened here at the Boston Massacre, now people can say what they want about it, but in the court of law, these officers were found not guilty, even though they were very unpopular. That's to say nothing of the recent shootings or my judgment of those. But one thing I think that history shows us is maybe our first instinct should be to get the evidence rather than to riot. Charlotte, North Carolina is being torn apart, and we really don't know the facts of all of this. A lot of these people are operating under assumptions, and I think when we look at that example of the Boston Massacre, it should have a sobering effect. That history at its best has the ability to make us kinder to each other, to make us more rational toward each other, and to make us less destructive toward each other. So again, not to say anything about the merits or demerits of the shootings themselves, but perhaps we can look at history and wait for the evidence before we decide to loot and riot and all of that other stuff. Subscribe if you haven't already, TomRichey.net, social media, and all that. I'll be back soon. Until the next drive.